Hello everyone, Mike Forsyth here from MGF Attorneys, Hilton, KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. Today I'd like to talk to you about living in a cohabitative relationship. What are your rights and are you entitled to support? There seems to be an idea out there that if you live together for a period of 3 weeks, 3 months or 3 years, that a common law marriage comes into being. Nothing could be further from the truth, and you need to know what your rights and obligations are in this regard. In 2006, the South African Law Reform Commission drafted a bill to try to set out what should happen in common law marriages, which would then apply to cohabitative relationships. Unfortunately, nothing has come of this, so there is no real law applying to common law marriages as we speak. There was supposed to be a draft domestic partnership bill that came into being, but nothing further has happened. What then is a cohabitative relationship? It probably has 3 elements. First of all, that there is a sexual relationship. Secondly, a factual cohabitation. And thirdly, a degree of stability to the relationship. If these 3 elements are present, then you can probably say that a cohabitative relationship has come into being. But what should you be doing to give yourself some clarity on your relationship? You need to look at a variety of things if you are in a cohabitative relationship. For example, where will you live? Does one of the parties own a property that you both live in? Will you buy a property together or rent a property together? If you buy a property, who will pay the mortgage bond, if there is a mortgage bond? Will you pay it in equal shares, or will there be a slight difference in how much is paid by each party, depending on their ability to pay? All of these things need to be taken into account when looking at this relationship. Other things to consider are who is going to pay the monthly living expenses, who will pay for the groceries, the lights and water, who will pay school fees if there are children involved in the marriage, in the relationship. All of these sort of things need to be considered. Then we come to things like bank accounts. Will you have separate bank accounts? Will you have a joint bank account? Will you have separate and joint bank accounts? You need to consider all of this very carefully indeed. The other thing to really consider is the question of whether you can inherit. Now, in a conventional marriage, if one of the parties should die intestate, which means they don't have a will, then there are certain rules that come into play, and the surviving spouse is entitled to a percentage of the estate. However, in a cohabitative relationship, the rules of intestate succession do not apply. So unless your spouse or partner has actually left a will and left you something in terms of that will, you could potentially be left destitute. Provision for inheritance in same-sex marriages has been looked at and provided for by the legislature, but for cohabitative relationships, there is nothing like that, and the Intestate Succession Act does not apply. Couples in cohabitative relationships do not have similar rights to institute claims against the other party for any finance or dependence on termination of that cohabitative relationship. As you can see, there are a myriad questions that you need to ask yourself when entering into a cohabitative relationship, and try to make sure that you have some sort of a contract drawn up before going into the relationship to ensure that you are adequately protected. Even if you have already entered into a cohabitative relationship, you can still enter into a contract so that you can set out your respective rights and obligations. Please take some advice on this and make sure that you are protected should a split happen and the consequent difficulties arising from that split. Thank you so much for watching, and check back again in future weeks for additional videos.